It's a very special day. It's a day in which you can see the living culture of China in writing. And let me start by welcoming from across that enormous river, the Charles, Professor Alistair David Inglis, who is professor of Chinese at Simmons College. He's taught at Hamilton College, before that the University of Melbourne, before that educated in Australia at Melbourne, also in Japan, is really living proof, something that I will die before ever, that white guys can learn how to write Chinese really well, which in my experience actually is not true.
You should wait and see me.
But do you want to talk a little bit about how you came to be a calligrapher?
Yes, I think even before I started to learn Chinese, I was fascinated with calligraphy, calligraphy on traditional Chinese paintings, and I'd sort of try and copy it, even though I didn't really know what I was copying. And then when I started learning Chinese, I thought the language would be a key to understanding the culture. And I guess I surprised myself, I was very good at it. But at that stage, I think one of my teachers lent me a little copybook. There was no one really to teach me calligraphy at the time, like the technical aspects. So I guess I sort of started by just copying, and using my artistic background kind of made sense as well. I almost became an artist at one stage in my life, but sort of my love for an interest in Chinese language and culture sort of steered me away from that. So basically, I learned my technique. I suppose I taught myself, and then later I got more technical books that sort of explain the orthodox way of posture and way to hold a brush, and how to move a brush and what have you, and like that. And then the chance, the opportunity to study in Japan, and then the chance to go to Taiwan was really good, and I was able to get copybooks from there that I sort of, and then I suppose I've copied and learned various styles, from proverbial kai shu, or the block script, to the semi-cursive, cursive, and the clerical script, or the li shu. I'd like to sort of at least attempt to demonstrate something fairly rare for you today that I haven't done in public before, which is the shou jin ti, or the slender gold script, pioneered by the Song Dynasty Emperor Huizong. It might have been reasonably influential during Huizong's time, but it hasn't been as extensively copied. The Emperor Zhang of the Jin Dynasty wrote in that style as well. It was sort of related to Huizong, so he tied it into a family tradition. I don't think there'd be too many people in the world who does it, because it's called slender gold script, obviously, because it's very slender and very thin brush strokes and thin lines. So if your hand shakes a little bit, or you're not too confident, sort of that'll sort of be readily apparent when you're looking at it. So hopefully I'll be brimming with confidence after Professor.
No, please.
When I start to, please feel free to sort of come over, and as long as you don't knock the cameras over, you probably need to sort of see it once I start writing. You can't see from way back there. This is the traditional way to grind the ink. I have the ink stone here, which is one of the 4 treasures of the scholar's studio, or the 文房四宝. Paper, of course, is another one. And the ink, very important, and perhaps most importantly, the brush. But I guess with calligraphy, it's the interaction between brush and the quality of the type of paper and the type of ink is pretty important. I've got my bottled ink here that, if we have time, I might demonstrate some other styles as well. For the shou jin ti, I like to grind my own ink, which is preferable for many reasons. I suppose in our sort of consumer society, we're sort of so used to instant gratification. It sort of comes by just taking ink straight out of a bottle. But in traditional China, there was sort of no shortcuts to there was no shortcuts to things, and things had to be done properly. The grinding of the ink ideally sort of steadies your mind, and for the task at hand. You might also sort of look at a copy of what you're about to copy, and then you might take the time to see things that otherwise you wouldn't have time to sort of see otherwise.
When you grind it, if I may ask, what is the liquid in that? Is that a traditional liquid or a?
It's just simply water,
Just
in
water
a sustain eye drops.
Okay.
Hopefully it's not eye drops. I think it's water.
Okay.
But it's just convenient to have a little dropper. And the idea is just grind a little bit at a time. Keep adding water. I think in the ancient days, masters of calligraphy and painting had servants and young servants to grind their ink for them. Although I didn't sort of like to ask your TAs to do that for me today.
Don't be shy.
The ink that you grind yourself is preferable also for many reasons. There's no preservative in it, so it's much better for the brushes if you have a very good brush that you want to keep. This brush I've been sort of practicing through it all throughout summer, and it's still fairly new. So it wouldn't be quite so new if I had been using sort of bottled ink. The tip of the brush is very important, because once the tip starts to go or it starts to split, that can be very frustrating, and there's sort of no looking back. Whereas ink that you've ground yourself, I find, compared to the bottle ink, has much better. It helps the brush to keep its tip much better, whereas particularly with the bottled ink and the cheaper quality bottled ink, the tip can tend to play up a little bit. Okay, so I did this a few days ago. If my hand's sort of steady enough, I'll try and sort of replicate it today. And then, as I said, I'll practice some other styles if time allows. This is an actual poem by the Song Emperor Huizong, talking about a scene in the palace. Okay, so
And what kind of paper are you writing on? If I may ask?
Right, this one. Yeah, I suppose technically rice paper is a catch-all phrase for it, although not all paper is made of rice. That was only really a later invention with the late imperial period. In Chinese, it's referred to as xuanzhi, after the village where that was famous for paper production. But xuanzhi tends to be a sort of a catch-all phrase. This paper I got from Blick, and I sort of like it for the shoujin tea, because depending on how much alum there is in the paper, the ink will sort of run to more or less. For this particular style, I don't really want the ink to run at all. However, the Chinese paper is different from Western paper in so much that it allows a certain amount of absorption of the ink into the paper, and that's very important. Because if you try and do calligraphy on maybe copy paper or even good quality watercolor paper, the brush will just sort of slide on the top, and the ink won't absorb. It won't really be successful. Okay, and then what I'm going to do, ideally I should have a nice straight back with the posture, both feet on the floor, using the whole force of my body here, and what have you. But because I'm so short-sighted, for this particular style, I really have to sort of focus with my naked eye, and I can't really focus that well with glasses, so I'll use a fairly unorthodox posture here. Okay, so the posture, the grip for the brush is fairly important as well, different from the pen. It's one thing I didn't warn you that calligraphy is not known as a spectator sport. So, don't be too disappointed. so there you have it, maybe. Thank you. Not quite as good as the few days ago, but I guess it'll do.
Well, I'm afraid we'll have to move on, but I think it shows you what patience, what diligence. You practice every day?
I don't get the time, unfortunately.
That's what
but
happens
I
being a
try.
professor.
That's right. Being a professor, I've got to read books and stuff like that, and teach classes, and some people expect me to go to meetings as well.
That's terrible. It's terrible, but it's absolutely magnificent. And thank you, Professor English. Thank you so much.
Thank you.